Sunny spells in the south, temperatures back over 20 degrees Celsius. Still on the cool side across northeast England and northeast Scotland. Still a few scattered showers around through the first part of the evening, but pretty quickly they die away. So from 8-9 o'clock, it's dry almost everywhere. Clear skies, light winds. Going to be a chilly one, actually. Temperatures well down into single figures. A pretty fresh start considering we're in June on Thursday. But for the bank holiday, it is by and large going to be a cracking day. Some very early mist and fog that will clear away. Main exception will be Northern Ireland, where it will cloud over with some showery rain trickling in here. Maybe 1 or 2 showers in parts of western Scotland and northern England too. But for most places, it's looking dry and bright tomorrow with lengthy spells of sunshine and a warmer day as well. Temperatures back in the high teens across the north and low 20s across the south. We will see a bit more of that rain spreading into Northern Ireland during Thursday evening, maybe a few more showers drifting north across the Grampians and the Highlands of Scotland. But for most places, it stays dry as we head into Friday. Some showers in the west on Friday, increasing chance through Saturday and Sunday of seeing showers in the south, but still a lot of dry weather to be had during the Jubilee.
Join us for a special GB News event.
The celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
From pageantry here at the Palace
to the parties in your street.
We'll bring you 4 days of
unforgettable moments.
This bank holiday weekend.
Join us live up and down the country as we share your memories
of Her Majesty's extraordinary reign.
Send us your stories, photographs and videos
at jubilee@gbnews.uk.
Come and celebrate with us
on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about a range of subjects, including food price inflation, how Marks and Sparks seem to be quitting the high street, plus giving you some top shopping and consumer tips when it comes to beating the squeeze. Plus, the youngsters love so-called fast fashion, buying a T-shirt or dress cheap and then throwing it away. But times are changing. Is fast fashion on its way out? On the Money, after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has told us that Boris Johnson won't be facing a leadership challenge. The Prime Minister's been criticised by his ethics advisor, who says Boris Johnson's police fine may have breached the ministerial code. Now, that's something politicians often would resign over. The ethics advisor, Lord Geit, questioned the Prime Minister's willingness to take responsibility for his own conduct. Dominic Raab has defended Boris Johnson, telling GB News not every breach of law amounts to a breach of the ministerial code.
It's only Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee, that will know, but I'm confident that the overwhelming majority of MPs that I talk to want to see us focused on the job at hand, the cost of living, the situation in Ukraine, the crime-fighting agenda, the skills agenda, and so I think it's very unlikely we'll see a leadership challenge.
The shadow levelling up Secretary Lisa Nandy says Tory MPs should have the courage to say enough is enough.
This is just a damning indictment of the Prime Minister's leadership, that successive ethics advisors just feel that they can't trust the integrity of the Prime Minister. This is a government that is rotten to the core, but the rot starts from the top. If you can't trust the Prime Minister to act with decency and integrity, not to bend the rules when it suits him and rewrite the rules when he falls foul of them, can you trust him when he says that he'll actually deliver on tackling the cost of living crisis or dealing with Russian aggression in Ukraine?
The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps is meeting with airline bosses today to find out what's gone wrong as half-term travel disruption continues. The Liberal Democrats have called for the army to be deployed to ease queues at airports and ports, as they say, to save the Jubilee weekend. Well, British Airways has cancelled at least 124 flights from Heathrow. EasyJet's cancelled over 30 from Gatwick today. BA says passengers were given advance notice. Airlines are blaming delays and cancellations on staff shortages. Well, let's find out more and go to our reporter, Will Hollis, who's at East Midlands Airport. Will, a lot of disappointed people. Can you just give us an overview of the disruption and what the Transport Secretary's had to say?
Yes, well, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, has said today that airlines have seriously oversold flights and holidays relative to their capacity. Now, there's lots of worry for a lot of people in different parts of the country. Manchester experiencing significant problems, Birmingham and Gatwick as well. Where we are at East Midlands Airports, things are a lot calmer. Things aren't seeing the same sort of problems on the same sort of scales that they are seeing around the country, but there's still a lot of concern, and there are still hundreds of flights that have been cancelled over this period towards the Jubilee weekend, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking very closely at what might happen now.
Will, thank you very much. Live for us from East Midlands Airport. Now, the footballer Kurt Zuma has been sentenced to 180 hours of community service and has been banned from keeping cats for 5 years after he admitted to kicking and slapping his pet cat. He's also been told to pay court costs of nearly £9,000. The 27-year-old West Ham defender pleaded guilty last week at Thames Magistrate Court to 2 counts of animal cruelty. Well, let's go live to the court. Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, has been there. Paul, what did the judge have to say?
She said, Susan Holdham, she called their behaviour disgraceful and reprehensible. She said the cat looked up to you to care for its needs. On that date in February, you did not provide for its needs, although she did acknowledge that both Kurt Zuma and his brother Johan, who received a 140-hour community service order, had expressed genuine remorse. West Ham said they want to make it clear that they condemn in the strongest terms any form of animal abuse or cruelty. They call the behaviour unacceptable. They also reiterate that they fined him £250,000 and donated that money to an animal welfare charity. They say now that the court has reached its decision, everyone will allow Kurt the chance to learn from his mistake and move on.
Paul, thank you outside the court for us. Now, a record 2 million people are estimated to be suffering from long COVID. The ONS says of those affected, nearly 3/4 say they're suffering 12 or more weeks after they had or suspected they had the infection. Over 370,000 are still suffering 2 years after having the virus. Common symptoms include fatigue, shortness of breath and brain fog. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's go to Liam for today's On the Money.
And coming up on the money today, food price inflation soaring. with the price of pasta, bread, mince and rice sharply up on official figures, but some basic foods are actually getting cheaper. We sort the wheat from the chaff, while offering tips and ideas on how to make ends meet. Plus, the cost of living squeeze is hitting the high street, with retail thoroughbred Marks & Spencer planning to close dozens of stores while moving dozens more to out-of-town locations. And is fast fashion over? Much of Generation Z, those under 25 or so, they're used to buying T-shirts and dresses cheap, then throwing them away after a few days. It's a trend being promoted by TV reality shows like Love Island. But is that trend now changing amidst environmental and cost of living concerns? That's the subject of today's Startup Britain feature. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On The Money? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet @GBNews. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News on TV, DAB+, digital radio and online. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On The Money. Now, food prices leapt 4.3% in May. That's rising at their fastest pace in a decade. Farmers, firms and retailers are now passing on those rising energy costs and soaring import bills to shoppers. Supply chain inflation is now happening in earnest, which is why this cost of living squeeze will get worse, I'm afraid, before it gets better. The Office for National Statistics says price rises are a major reason why the overall rate of inflation, the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, is rising at a 40-year high of 9% a year. Farmers are facing fertiliser costs 4 times up on last year, and much higher animal feedstock costs too, not least as Russia and Ukraine are key fertiliser and wheat exporters. Russia and Ukraine in particular are often dubbed the breadbasket of Europe. These huge countries grow tens of millions of tonnes of cheap food each year. But war in Ukraine and economic conflict between Russia and the West is causing not only oil and gas prices to spiral, but food prices too. Official figures show that in April, the price of pasta, made from wheat of course, was up 50% on the same month last year. And how about bread? What could be more basic? That's now 16% more expensive than a year ago. Minced beef, if you like a nice spag bol, or maybe something else, is also up 16%. And rice, that's 15% more expensive in April than in April 2021. Not everything's become more expensive. Potatoes, cheese and apples, they've fallen in price little since last April. And in fairness, ministers have just extended help to millions of the most hard-pressed households as this cost of living squeeze gets worse. As consumer spending power falls, though, the UK high street is feeling the strain. Marks & Spencer's, one of our thoroughbred brands, is slashing its UK operation from 254 full-line stores selling both food and clothes to just 180 across the country, more of which will move away from town centres. Closures will happen over the next 3 years, says M&S, as urban locations have, in their words, lost impetus. This squeeze in living standards is changing Britain. Not only are millions of households cutting back, adopting more basic lifestyles, but the impact of the pandemic and rising inflation is changing our town centres too. And that's our On The Money question today. Will this cost of living squeeze kill the UK high street? Grown-up conversations with people who know their stuff. That's what we do here on The Money. Talking of which, here's Mike Weedon. He's back on The Money. He is chair of the Federation of Small Businesses Retail and High Street Policy Unit. Great to have you with us again, Mike. Tash Courtney-Smith returns. She's retail and marketing expert and CEO of Bolt Digital. Very nice to see you in the studio, Tash. And I can't keep her away. Here she is, Miss Moneypenny herself, Jasmine Birtles, MissMoneyMagpie.com. Great to see you as ever, Jasmine. Mike, let's start with you. We're talking about a couple of things today. We're talking about this high rise in food prices. So let's just focus on that, because many of our small and medium-sized businesses, they are working in the hospitality industry, they are working in the food processing industry, and so on. We are now seeing, aren't we, those SMEs, those small and medium-sized enterprises, passing on the costs down the supply chain, increasing prices in the shops. It had to happen.
It did. I mean, one thing that's behind this is behind the cost of living crisis is there's a cost of doing business crisis as well. All of these input prices are being driven, for example, we know by energy. But businesses, small businesses in particular, don't have any of the caps and the support that we're all consumers, all have ourselves. So, for example, we have seen businesses where their energy input costs have gone up by 245%.
Christ.
And there's no cashback for them, and there's no limit on that as well. So that is driving a great deal of it. Their input prices in terms of product are being driven by a number of things. Obviously, energy comes into that, but just the relationship between between sterling and the dollar has changed significantly over the last year, and many of these products which are coming in are priced worldwide in dollars. So there's this great drive behind it. Rising costs. A lot of businesses have falling reserves. So they've been eking things out. They've been trying not to put prices up. There are, I have to say, based on FSB and ONS figures, the real concerns that several 100,000 small businesses are vulnerable to going bust in the next few months. So there's a great challenge here, Liam, yeah.
Interesting you mentioned import prices there. We often mention On the Money, of course, as the pound gets weaker, particularly against the dollar, imports get more expensive, and we import a lot in this country. In particular, we import energy, Mike, as you well know, and as the dollar gets stronger and the pound gets weaker, those energy prices go up, particularly for the UK. Tash Courtney-Smith, let's talk to you now, if we may. What do you make of the fact that M&S are retreating from quite a lot of high streets in quite a lot of major towns across the UK? I know you specialise in digital business and so on, but aren't we losing something the way the high street's being hollowed out?
Yeah, I think what's interesting with Marks and Spencer's is they're always held up almost as a poster child of the difficulties that the British high street faces. So this presents as being a bad thing. When you actually look at it from their point of view, their business is turning around. They've obviously famously had struggles over the past few years, and it's turning around. And this decision is one that is right for them and probably right for the consumer. However, the question is, where does it leave all the other retailers on the British high street? It's a bit like one of the most popular people is leaving the party. You know, what happens when one of the most popular or key figures...
Party loses the vibe, right?
The party starts... People start thinking, oh, this is the end of the party.
Yeah.
There's certain stores that draw shoppers to high streets, and Marks and Spencer's is one of them. If we think about, the dozens of high streets that are going to lose their Marks and Spencer's, then what will follow will be that probably less shoppers will go there, or there'll be less reason to go into the high street. So I think there's a dual edge to this story, in that firstly, Marks and Spencer's are making a decision that's right for them, and one that's right for their consumers. What the customers want is these larger out-of-town stores that they can drive up to and have a better shopping experience. But they're slightly abandoning the rest of the British high street in doing this.
Yeah, and I don't think that all customers do want that. A lot of people do want a high street, and they want to be able to walk.
They don't want to drive, do they?
No.
Maybe if they're older, they don't. I thought we were meant to be not driving.
Exactly.
I thought we were meant to be environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
It seems to me, Jasmine, that as Tash Courtney-Smith says, obviously Marks and Spencer's are making the decision that works for them commercially. That's what they do. They have shareholders, and the CEO has a legal obligation to do that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I can't help thinking the government could have changed the business environment and altered that decision. Business rates, for instance, could have been helped. And it's not just the M&S's, I think, as Tash rightly pointed out, because for every M&S you've got in every high street towns in particular, you will have dozens of other smaller, often chains, sometimes independent retailers, who feed off the fact that people come into town to go to M&S.
Yeah, including cafes, of course.
Yeah.
And they do exactly that. They feed off people coming in. And I think it's government, I think it's local government as well. Because when you go into a town, I went to Bournemouth recently, which is a lovely town.
Yeah.
Then you go into the high street and it's just depressing because there's practically nothing there. And that has an effect.
Bournemouth.
Yes.
That's a pretty prosperous place.
Exactly.
It used to be a kind of retirement place. Obviously, lots of people go to retire there. It's got a big tech scene. It's got a fabulous university.
Students, absolutely. And yet, the centre, the heart of it...
Boarded up.
It really is. And you come away with that impression that, it's nice beach, but shame about the high street. So it really does. Ultimately, it affects your view of a place. It affects property prices, all of that. And I think that local government and government itself needs to rethink the way that the high street is presented now.
Mike, let's go back to you. As the Federation of Small Businesses well knows, we champion small and medium-sized enterprises here on The Money. We champion the high street, particularly in our towns across Britain, not just our cities. So many of us live in towns, not least outside London and the South East. What's your thought on Tasha's remark that M&S are clearly doing what's right for them commercially? You wouldn't expect anything else. Do you think that the government could have done something different to stop this hollowing out of the high street?
Yeah, there's a story which goes back, at least 10 years, but probably 20, and we're seeing the upshot of that. And the story is the move, particularly of large businesses, out of town centres. Now, they haven't done that for fun. They've done it for the reasons of running their business profitably and so forth. That's understood. But there has always been an advantage. Quick aside, 10 years ago, I wrote a piece about online sales and so forth, but actually 90% of the article was about the move out of town. And one of the reasons they go out of town is because rents are cheaper, and that automatically translates into business rates being cheaper as well, because there's a relationship between these things. Going beyond that, of course, we're seeing a further move where the business rate system actually underpins that move out of town from town to out of town, but then right out of this world into internet territory with warehouses where the rents are a fraction of what they are elsewhere, and they're basically warehouse rents, whereas town centre rents have remained very high. Government policy in terms of this taxation actually is helping to drive business out of town.
It's interesting, isn't it, Tash? I know you specialise in digital business, but this issue of business rates, these are taxes that businesses have to pay before they've made any profit, before they've even taken in any revenue. They have to pay it on the rateable value of the premises that they own or they rent. But tell us what you think the vision is in terms of the UK high street. Mike's been pretty downbeat there. Is there an upbeat vision here?
I think it's pretty tough. I mean, I think if you look at Marks and Spencer's, they've pointed the finger towards the government and local authorities who have failed to provide the impetus back into high streets. And you can clearly say, oh, yes, because of business rates, they haven't provided the support. But also, there is a shift in what consumers want. Even talking about Marks and Spencer's, their online sales are up 52%. So it's very difficult to reinvigorate and provide impetus at the same time as the way in which we as consumers behave.
Aren't we in danger of going too far in the other direction, though? During the pandemic, we went from about a fifth to about a third of all sales were online, retail sales by value. Obviously, M&S, it's a little bit upmarket. Lots of professional people use it. A lot of the high-value stuff, they'll be buying their washing machines online, so maybe 50% of their value is online. But most transactions people want to make physically in person. People want to go to a high street. They want to meet their friends for a coffee.
Do they, though? I mean, obviously, lots of people do, but there's
got to be a balance. There's got to be a balance.
Well, what can you do if people are changing the way they are actually behaving? Can you reinvigorate a high street if at the same time increasingly people are thinking, oh, do you know what, I'll just log online and buy it from the online version? It's a very difficult challenge. So when it comes to presenting a more joyous view of the British high street, which obviously all of us know is a part of Britain, we all want to be a great place. Yes, we can put in cafes and experiential stores, but the brutal truth is at the same time, customers are beginning to behave in a different way, where they will opt to order online. And that's what Marks and Spencer is seeing, a doubling of their online sales, at which point it's very difficult to see how you can easily solve that problem of an intention to support the British high street and then customers actually increasingly preferring to shop online.
You and I were going to talk tips and beat the squeeze advice after the break, but what's your thought on what Tasha's saying about the high street? Is it inevitable? Is it going to be hollowed out completely? Is the high street just going to be a place where you get your hair cut and maybe go to sort of theme park type attractions, panic rooms and massages?
Yes, at the moment, yes. As you were talking there, I was thinking, part of the problem also is that online has been actively helped by government.
That's Mike Whedon's point.
Yes. So when you have that, you do have an inequality.
Because the online companies are better at lobbying than the existing bricks and mortar companies. They got the cash.
Yeah, seems like it. So you've got, I think potentially government could could put some extra charges on online and make it a little bit more expensive or harder for us to get things online. I mean, I'm speaking against myself here because I'm certainly one. I enjoy buying online as well as on the high street. But at the moment, you know, if you buy something online, you have 14 days to send it back, whatever, for any reason at all.
Yeah.
And that's a really good incentive to buy something online as opposed to in the shops where you can only take it back if there's something wrong with it, you know. So that on its own, it's an understandable thing that they brought in, but that on its own has, I think, made us now buy more online.
Mike Wootton, briefly back to you from the Federation of Small Business for the last word. You've set this hair running in this discussion. Chapeau to you. Do you think that the government is over-egging the benefits it's giving to online retailers? Do you think it's over-egging the obstacles it's placing in the way of bricks and mortar retailers?
Its policies make it more difficult to make money in town centres. But actually, I think, and I'm going to be quite hopeful here, which would probably worry you a great deal, Liam, that actually there's no reason why, apart from the fact it's difficult to get into it, small businesses can't actually be both online and in person as well. During the pandemic, looking at trade figures for what happened to business, which went on, the major gain for online sales was actually to businesses which also have premises, not to the pure play ones. So there is an opportunity there. The government can try and make it maybe less difficult for them to do business profitably, because ultimately that's what business comes down to. But ideally, I have a number of small businesses I deal with who I can buy from online or face-to-face, best of both worlds.
Interesting stuff. Mike Wootton, always good to have your insights on the show. Mike's of the Federation of Small Business, of course. Tash Courtney-Smith, also CEO of Bolt Digital. Great to have you with us here on The Money. Come back again soon. This is On The Money with me, Liam Halligan. And talking of beating the squeeze, after the break, MissMoneyBagPie.com, Jasmine Birtles. She'll be giving us tips and tricks on how you can save a few quid. Stay with us. You're On The Money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're On The Money. It's 1:25. Now, if you're an On The Money regular, and why aren't you if you're not, you'll have noticed over the weeks we've been doing our best to give some tips on how to beat the squeeze as soaring fuel, electricity, gas and food prices mean there's a lot less money in your pocket each month. Well, it's our lucky day because Jasmine Birtles, our regular panellist and money-saving guru, is here with us to share her tips and tricks on how to make your money go further. Jasmine, great to have some time with you in the studio to talk about this. Let's talk a little bit about food and fuel. We're going to come on to some other things we don't normally talk about soon, which is obviously a good thing to do. But food and fuel are the big ones are for most families. Now, moneymagpie.com, you have many people contacting you, subscribing to your advice. So let's talk about food first.
Well, food, I think it is a big one. I mean, you've just said about the ONS have said that pasta basics have gone up by 50% in the last year. And, you know, at last they're admitting it. It's what Jack Monroe's been saying for a while. So, you know, it is a tough one, but there are lots of things that we can do and people are already doing, like going down a brand for your supermarket. If you're usually at Waitrose, go down to Lidl. Lidl, by the way, is doing some rather nice boxes. They do that for £1.50. You can get a box of all sorts of vegetables and fruit, etc. that you know are not perfect.
Yeah, slightly misshapen, but you're chopping them up and putting them in a stew anyway, so who cares? Aldi and Lidl are doing quite well, aren't they? They're actually gaining market share over Waitrose and Tesco and Sainsbury.
Absolutely, and it's understandable because, you know,
they're the discounters.
And, you know, the problem that we're having at the moment is it's not just people on benefits, it's the middle incomers that are feeling the squeeze, and they're going down to Lidl, Morrison's, etc. And rightly so, I think. So it's, you know, a lot of it is about cooking from raw, doing all of these things that we know we should do, but you know, when you've got a bit more time and a bit more less time and a bit more money, you kind of go and do a takeout instead.
And as we often say, you know, check that you're not eligible, you are eligible for certain benefits and so on. Ask citizens advice.
Turn to us. Turntous.org.uk is a really handy one. Also entitled to. They've got benefits calculators, so you just stick your information on and they sort of spit out the benefits and tax credits you should have. And also Turn to Us is really handy because they have access to grants, actual grant-making bodies.
That's right.
Free money. And, you know, it's for all sorts, people in Hull, people in London, people, you know, if you're a nurse, if you're a hairdresser, there are all sorts of these charities for where you live or what you do or what your parents do, all of these kinds of things.
So food is obviously a big share of everyone's shop each month, and you know, for the most part, if you're lower in the income scale, it's a disproportionately large share, as is fuel, of course. A lot of people are on prepayment fuels. They have to, you know, load them up at local shops. They end up paying more. They haven't got direct debits, haven't got bank accounts. But other people too, the fuel price cap is going up. It could go up again in the autumn to almost £2,800 on average. Is there anything we can do? It's so hard to get a better deal these days because everyone can see the prices are already up and they're going to go up further.
Yes, I mean, everybody's saying, you know, that even the comparison sites that live off this, they're saying...
don't do anything.
Don't do it, yes. So they're actually speaking against themselves, if you like. But, you know, that's the fact. So, yeah, at the moment we can't. If you are on a very low income, particularly if you're on benefits, there are usually social tariffs. So it's worth phoning up your provider and saying, you know, have you got anything better for me, particularly? And if you're struggling, do phone them up because there's a lot that they can do.
And they're legally obliged to at least help you in difficult circumstances. I think they have to give you a grace period if you're in particular financial difficulties. And things like, you know, make sure the washing machine's full when you use it. If you've got a tumble dryer, hang the stuff up if you're out during the day, or if you're lucky enough to have a garden or an outside space, particularly in this good weather.
I have foil behind my radiator. So if you've got, like me, I've got radiators on some outside walls, so I put foil. You can get special radiator foil from Wix and places, or Wilko, and or just ordinary foil, and that sort of convects the heat back into the room. It all helps.
Let's talk about some of these other issues now. Dressing, wardrobe on a budget. Tell us about that.
Yes, so as you know, in my Daily Mail column, I've been doing quite a lot of tips for saving money in different areas. So, for example, when it comes to your wardrobe, there are lots of things that you can do. I mean, we're talking discretionary spend here, but one thing that I do is have a swap shop and share clothes with friends.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you get to get rid of some of the rubbish that you don't want and get new other people's rubbish that you can wear. Also, use online discount codes. I actually use honey.com or .co.uk. It's actually it's in my computer, and it automatically puts discount codes on when you go into websites. You can, for special occasions, you can also rent or borrow clothes, you know, because if you get something posh, you're very rarely going to use it, so you might as well rent it. It's often cheaper. And shop off-season.
So buy your winter coat now and buy your summer stuff for your next year's holiday if you're lucky enough to go away in November.
Yes, particularly on eBay or you know, the second-hand sites. It's much cheaper to get them then. And then also, it's worth having a charity shop gift card or giving it to somebody else. If you want a present at your birthday, ask for a charity shop gift card, because charity shops are great for clothes.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a clever idea, isn't it? You can use them in various different charity shops.
I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
It's a new one. Yeah, it's set up by a friend of mine. So I'm pretty impressed by it, because I like shopping in charity shops.
Yeah.
They're really good. Go second-hand as well. There are lots of This is the cool thing now. You know, it's why, as you were mentioning earlier, the fast fashion sites are not doing so well, because the cool people are doing second-hand. Shpock, Depop, Vinted, of course, eBay, all of those. And also, airline auctions. Did you know you can buy lost luggage? Lost luggage is actually auctioned off at various auction houses around the country. Sight unseen. You bid on luggage, and you have a vague idea of what's in it. They take some of the stuff out, you know, nasty knickers, etc. first, and you know, you can get a whole luggage full of clothes for 40 quid, and then try and make your own clothes. Something I've been doing for years.
So you're dressed well on a budget. You've borrowed some clothes from your friends. You've gone to second-hand shops. You've got a charity gift shop from your mate. But of course, a lot of us, we still want to look good. It's about makeup and beauty as well. How can you achieve those things on a budget?
Yes, exactly.
I'm talking about me, of course.
I was going to say it's important to you. I do know. Yes, beauty on a budget.
I have quite an extensive grooming regime, as you can imagine.
I can tell. So, firstly, you know, you can actually make your own. We've got lots of recipes on Money Magpie, and there are specialist websites, Feel Uniques, those kinds of things that sell them at a discount. You can supersize it, go for big sizes in shampoo, etc. And also, get free makeup samples when you go. That's a good one. You go to the department stores, go all around. They've got lots of free makeup samples that you can ask for. And also, you could host a party. There are various things like Mary Kay, for example, Virgin, Body Shop. You get free makeup if you host a party where your friends buy makeup.
We're going back to the 70s, aren't we? We've got the Queen's Jubilee, like in 1977. We've got Tupperware parties and all the rest of it. Crikey. Yeah. Well, Jasmine, fantastic to talk to you as ever. Jasmine Birdsall's there, MissMoneyMagpie.com. We all love updating our wardrobe, especially as the sun is starting to peep out. So great to get those tips from Jasmine. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. After the break, that question we were just discussing, is fast fashion on its way out? Do you even know what fast fashion is? Well, listen up and you'll learn. We speak to one British entrepreneur who thinks throwing out cheap clothes has gone out of vogue. That's today's Startup Britain. After the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
It's 1:34. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has told GB News that Boris Johnson won't be facing a leadership challenge. The Prime Minister's been criticised by his ethics advisor, who says Boris Johnson's police fine may have breached the ministerial code. That's often something politicians would resign over. Well, Mr Johnson says a fixed penalty notice is not a criminal conviction and that he hasn't broken the minister's code. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy says Conservative MPs should have the courage to say enough is enough.
This is just a damning indictment of the Prime Minister's leadership, that successive ethics advisors just feel that they can't trust the integrity of the Prime Minister. This is a government that is rotten to the core, but the rot starts from the top.
The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps is meeting with airline bosses today to find out what's gone wrong as half-term travel disruption continues. The Liberal Democrats have called for the army to be deployed to ease queues at airports and ports, as they say, to save the Jubilee weekend. Well, British Airways has cancelled at least 124 flights at Heathrow. EasyJet has cancelled over 30 flights from Gatwick today. The footballer Kurt Zuma has been ordered to carry out 180 hours of community service and has been banned from keeping cats for 5 years after he admitted to kicking and slapping his pet cat in a video. He's also been told to pay court costs of nearly £9,000. The 27-year-old West Ham defender pleaded guilty last week at Thames Magistrate Court to 2 counts of animal cruelty. Prices in the shops have gone up at the fastest rate in more than a decade. Retail inflation went up by 2.8% in May. The British Retail Consortium says the situation is likely to get worse before it gets better. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.263 to the dollar. The pound is 1.174 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,455.02 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money. Now, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps is meeting with airline bosses to find out what's gone wrong as half-term travel disruption continues. British Airways has cancelled at least 124 flights from Heathrow, and 30 EasyJet flights won't take off from Gatwick today. And it doesn't end there. The travel giant TUI has also cancelled 180 flights from Manchester Airport over the next month, because it says of ongoing disruption due to staff shortages as a consequence of layoffs during COVID lockdowns. Speaking to GB News, Shadow Scotland Secretary Ian Murray says the industry's been asking for help for a long time. Well, let's go now to our reporter, Will Hollis, who is at East Midlands Airport. Will, it's looking a bit quieter behind you now than when I've seen you appearing earlier here on GB News, but I'm sure there's lots of frustrated would-be holidaymakers.
Yes, well, it's a bit of a blessing, actually, if you are travelling from East Midlands or Airport today or over this Jubilee period, because you are seeing those massive queues at places like Manchester, at places like Birmingham, Gatwick. That seems to be the one that's most hit by these cancellations, most hit by these queues. Of course, these are all problems that are residual from the end of the pandemic. It was only March that all restrictions relating to COVID were released. But I suppose if you were coming to East Midlands Airport, you'd probably be expecting to see those big queues, but not really. It's a little bit of a smaller airport, and they do seem to be managing. The people that I've spoken to today have said that while they are seeing the occasional snag, the occasional bit of a delay, they are mostly managing really well with what's been going on. Now, why are those bigger airports, Manchester, Gatwick, Heathrow, why are they seeing so many problems? Well, one of the reasons, according to Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, that he said in today's news is that they've oversold and overbooked holidays. That's airlines that he's accusing of overselling holidays, selling them to too many people, selling airspace, spaces and passenger seats, selling too many of those to the market. Obviously, there's a bit of a pent-up demand from that pandemic period, 2 years that most people have been forced out of their holiday, their seasonal venture towards Europe. Alicante, Faro, Rhodes, the places that people are flying off to today. And so there is that problem, mainly at those major airports. He's saying that he wants to meet with airline bosses and to solve this problem. This is a problem that has continued over the last few months, ever since the bank holiday and the holiday around Easter. Lots of people saw their cancellations then. Lots of passengers would have been crossing their fingers and hoping that all of this would be gone by now, at least in time for the Jubilee. But union bosses are saying that this is a problem that's going to get worse before it gets better over summer.
Interesting, Will, that you think people travelling from, with all respect, our smaller airports will have a better time of it. It's the big ones that are really suffering.
Yes, of course. So those really massive airports where you'll see 10, 20,000 people travelling a day, that's where you're going to find most of the problems. There is obviously this backlog for things like security training. Over the pandemic, most staff or large numbers of staff at most airports, they were made redundant. Then they had to be quickly hired back as changes were made. So you are going to see most of those problems at those bigger airports where you need to find more staff to fill the gaps. Here at East Midlands, the people that I've been speaking to are saying that things are ticking along. You might see an occasional queue every now and again, but for most of the time, it's 10, 15 minutes that you'll find your way through security. So people, when they get here, they said to me, actually, I'm feeling quite happy that I've decided to book with East Midlands because I don't think I'm going to see the same problems when they're seeing queues move along much quicker. But we have to acknowledge that wherever else you are in the country, in most of those other big airports, you are going to see big queues and some people complaining of waits for 2, 3, 4 hours just to get through security.
Will Hollis there, GB News East Midlands correspondent, fittingly enough, at East Midlands Airport. Thanks for joining us, Will. Well, a spokeswoman for EasyJet told GB News, "We're very sorry for the late notice of some of these cancellations and inconvenience caused for customers booked on these flights. However, we believe this is necessary to provide reliable services over this busy period." And TUI, they told us, "We would like to apologise for the inconvenience to customers who've experienced flight delays or a flight cancellation. Delays have been caused due to a combination of factors, and we're doing everything we can to keep customers updated." British Airways, they said it's been a challenging period for the entire industry, and at British Airways, we're completely focused on 3 priorities: our customers, supporting the biggest recruitment drive in our history, and increasing our operational resilience. Now, it's time for Startup Britain, On the Money's regular feature on new UK businesses. And today, we're talking about... Yep, it's Love Island, the hit ITV reality show watched by millions that's due back on our screens next week. I've got a text. Apparently, this is what happens when something big happens on Love Island, or is about to happen. Oh yes, I'm a huge fan. And here is some news just in. After years of promoting fast fashion brands, that's mainly T-shirts and dresses designed to be bought cheap and worn just a few times before being thrown away, Love Island will now partner with the mighty eBay, dressing its contestants instead in second-hand clothes. The move isn't the only example of how fast fashion could be on a downward spiral amid environmental and cost of living concerns. Yesterday, the fast fashion brand Misguided collapsed into administration. Hours later, The brand was bought for £20 million by Mike Ashley's Fraser's Group, which also owns Sports Direct and House of Fraser, of course. But still, the consumer habits of Generation Z, those under 25 or so, could now be shifting away from fast fashion. And that's why my guest today, Jake Posner, found sustainable fashion brand No One True Anything in September 2021. He's a determined young man with a lot of savvy, but his journey hasn't always been an easy one. And here to tell us more about his business and about fast fashion is Jake Posner, my latest guest on Startup Britain. Jake, great to have you in the studio here on The Money. Tell us about your brand.
So the brand No One True Anything really has such a deeper meaning. I want people to create their own perception over what they see, over what they consume. And I want people to dig a bit deeper. I don't want people to just read stuff on a surface level and accept it for what that is. You know, let's look at something like, take the metaverse, what Mark Zuckerberg is creating. Why is there a need for us to go back to a digital age or a digital setting from our home and consume everything behind a screen again? To me, I don't understand it. Is it power? Is it data? Is it money? To me, it's crazy. So for me, the brand is about finding a different perspective, making your own perspective and making your own decisions.
You know, we just had a conversation at the top of the show about the high street, and we had two very savvy people on the panel. Indeed, we had Mike from the Federation of Small Businesses, and we were discussing, you know, what's going to happen to the UK high street. And one of our panellists was saying that, but consumers want to consume online. And we were saying, yeah, but they want to go to the high street as well. Something seems to be changing here. The pandemic, the cost of living crisis, it seems to be hollowing out the high street. On the other hand, though, people seem to be reverting to type, with fast fashion now suffering. You know, you are of that generation that's grown up with fast fashion, that's part of fast fashion, just like my kids.
Okay.
Tell us your feelings and what you think your generation's feelings are about fast fashion, because to some of us oldies, it seems pretty indulgent.
So I've never been one for fast fashion. I've never.
But your age group is, right?
My age group is, for sure. And I think because of the things like an online platform, it's so easy, so accessible to click a button, oh, it comes to my door next day and I don't have to leave.
And they watch this stuff on Love Island, right? And everyone on Love Island, they're talking about fast fashion. Oh, I bought this T-shirt, I wore it once, chucked it away.
Exactly, and I bought it and I...
Very glamorous.
You know what? It's glamorous for a certain extent. It's glamorous to take a picture and put it on your Instagram. What it's not glamorous for is the environmental cost. It's not glamorous for sustainability, and, you know, we're doing more damage by buying it.
And during a cost of living crisis, it looks pretty indulgent.
During the cost of living crisis, yeah, I mean, it can be indulgent. You know, I feel obviously at the moment with the cost of living crisis, there's a lot more priorities that people have. But I think that if we went back to, say, a government level, I'm not talking about funding here in terms of like money that the government are going to give to people. I'm talking about the government educating people, the government taking a step back at maybe what they could be reassessing. And again, this is maybe like a perception or something that I have, which is where the brand name comes from. I watch football, and every time there's an advert on football, there's gambling. Gambling's not helping anyone.
Yeah.
So by people being able to sit at their phone, tap a button, put £100 on a roulette number, or put £100 on a football bet, that's not helping. So if we took that away from people and made it a bit more restrictive, made it a bit more difficult to access, would people then not be as stuck in a crisis as bills come up, as bills become more and more expensive? Would people have a bit more in their savings, a bit more in their pocket to be like, okay, you know what, cost of living is going up, but I'm fine, I can manage because I've been taught that maybe gambling isn't the right thing to do the whole time, or something like that.
So a lot of people listening and watching will agree with a lot of what you've said. They'll think fast fashion's a bit indulgent. They'll agree with your view on gambling. Just fill us in a little bit more. How is the brand that you're trying to develop, how will it make money? How are you going to turn this into a business? How are you going to be able to carry on saying what you want to say by building, you know, something that makes money, that allows you to live, allows you to employ people?
For me, sustainability is a chain. And it starts with nature, and then it goes to materials, and it goes to human beings. Now, if we're not looking after humans, everything else fails. Because if we don't improve local environments and we don't improve how people are living and we don't make sure that people are paid more than a fair and living wage, nothing improves. So for me, creating, success, a lot of people view success as money. How much money did you make? What's your turnover? What's your profit margins? That's not my be-all and end-all goal.
But you've got to make a living,
Of course, you've got to make a living. And obviously, to set up a business, obviously, it is about profit. But at the same time, I want to create a space. I want to create...
What are you going to sell? Are you going to create some intellectual property? You're going to create a brand?
Yeah,
and bestow your brand on certain goods, certain ways of doing things?
Yeah,
is that the idea?
Yeah, so I have a collection of T-shirts, I have a collection of hoodies, I have a collection of socks, baseball caps, denim jackets. But I want the brand to become more of a community-focused thing, whereby if I have ever got to a stage where I had a brick-and-mortar shop, people can come in, people can access books, people can access a workshop, people can come and share ideas, and everyone's bouncing off each other. And to me, that feels more like what a business is now. A business is meant to be more of a community. A business is meant to be a space where people can come and feel comfortable, people can come and see what you're doing, people can buy into more of the vision than the actual product itself. And for me, that's really important.
Now, in what I do, I've met many, many entrepreneurs over many years, from world-famous business titans all the way through to people, their whole life's work has been one shop on a small high street. And what many, many entrepreneurs have in common, Jake, is that they're not conventionally successful in their early life. They might not do so well at school. They might be a little bit ostracised. They might be loners in some way.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think your life so far marks you out as an entrepreneur?
At school, I would be selling literally anything and anything to make some money. And I remember I got thrown out of school at 16. I got 1 GCSE, and I basically got told, look, you're not going to uni, you're not going to college, go and do something. So I was like, OK, fine, fair enough. I ended up running like a guest list at a nightclub whereby people would pay to come in and I would take a cut of the door money.
It needs a lot of savvy to do that. You need to learn how to handle people, right?
So, yeah, and especially when they've had a drink.
Fight. You have to diffuse a fight.
And they've had a drink.
And you're not a huge guy, with all respect.
I'm not the biggest of all people. I'm not the biggest of all people. So for me, there's always been something there. I've wanted to create something and prove to people that doubted me, like, oh, OK, Jake has gone and created something. And I hear those words the whole time in my head.
And they motivate you?
100%. It's just fuel to my fire. It's literally just chucking it on there. And it really does motivate me.
Well, Jake, I've enjoyed meeting you, and we'll keep an eye on your business.
Thank you.
Not one true anything. I've learned a lot about fast fashion, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jake Posner there, our latest guest on Startup Britain. Now, lots of you emailing about today's opening discussion. Peter says the high street will disappear altogether as shops can't compete with internet shopping. Carl emailed to say, I used to buy all my socks and underwear from M&S. The quality's not the same anymore. That's why these businesses are failing. Sacrilege. M&S pants not the best, crikey. George says the cost of living crisis will be a catalyst for the continued demise of the high street. Consumer habits have changed and businesses are adapting to this new world. Alan says, I buy online because it's the only way to get my size. You can go to a high street shop and they just don't have the full range and you've made a wasted journey. That's really interesting. Tim says the problem we also have in cities is car access and parking fees. They're out of this world. No wonder M&S and others are shutting up in town and moving out. Thanks for your emails today. A very interesting range of views from GB News viewers and listeners as ever. That's all we've got time for today. But stay tuned because Alex Phillips, she's up next with We Need to Talk About. And here she is. Alex, what's on the menu?
Well, do you know what? It's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? The same stories keep coming back again and again. But this time, when it comes to Partygate, it really does seem the vultures are circling, with some people out there suggesting that the right number of letters to call that vote of no confidence could well be in, and that vote could happen as soon as next week. We are also discussing Ukraine, as Germany and America are both sending more weapons to the country after a period, I think, of it seeming like Western leaders were losing their appetite to arm Ukraine. And we're looking ahead at the Jubilee. Lots of that, and a lion with a mullet.
A lion with a mullet, crikey. That's Alex Phillips after the break. I can't wait to see that. And join me tomorrow at 1 p.m. where I'll be continuing my focus on the cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. Thanks for joining me today. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. The weather's slowly settling down as we head towards the long weekend. Still some showers around today, mainly across northern and eastern parts of England, but high pressure is trying to move in. There are a couple of weather fronts that will provide some showers during the long weekends, but certainly for most in the west, it's dry and bright out there this afternoon. The cloud breaking up across Wales, some sunny spells for Northern Ireland, any showers over southwest England fading, and nowhere near as many showers across Scotland. But across northern England and eastern England, we are still likely to see some heavy showers in places this afternoon, but they'll be hit and miss, by no means everywhere catching a downpour. And in the sunny spells in the south, temperatures back over 20 degrees Celsius. Still on the cool side across northeast England and northeast Scotland. Still a few scattered showers around through the first part of the evening, but pretty quickly they die away. So from 8-9 o'clock, it's dry almost everywhere. Clear skies, light winds. Going to be a chilly one, actually. Temperatures well down into single figures. A pretty fresh start considering we're in June on Thursday. But for the bank holiday, it is by and large going to be a cracking day. Some very early mist and fog that will clear away. Main exception will be Northern Ireland, where it will cloud over with some showery rain trickling in here. Maybe 1 or 2 showers in parts of western Scotland and northern England too. But for most places, it's looking dry and bright tomorrow with lengthy spells of sunshine and a